Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al, week 6 on Draftkings, and I have an absolutely special cage match for you, our head-to-head battle. This week I have Stephania Bell, Starfania, from the Fantasy Focus podcast on ESPN. You have listened to her for years, you have watched her for years, you rely on her for your injury information. I'm going to see if I can inflict some pain inside the cage this week. We're playing for charity, and this is a head-to-head match that's different from the head-to-head matches that you may play on DraftKings. If you play head-to-head against somebody else, you might have a 1v1 or a 2v2 by the end of the day. There's a loud overlap in those lineups because you make yours and they make theirs, and the obvious value plays in cash are usually pretty obvious. So you're not going to have two unique lineups, but the way that we do it, we're going to draft kind of schoolyard style. First and 1, second and 2, then we pick one the rest of the way. Loser donates to the winner's charity. Why don't you guys leave me a reply down below and let me know who you think has the better team this week. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell, and be sure to share the video to Facebook or Twitter, or just copy the link and trick the algorithm any way that you want to do it. I appreciate all the help and all the clicks. So let's hit it.
He's a legend.
Howdy, Stephania. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm very nervous.
Yeah, first time in the cage. First time I've ever had.
First time in the cage.
First female competitor that I've had in the cage from the fantasy football world. I find it appropriate that it's you.
Well, you know what? I am honored to be the first woman in the cage going head to head with you. But now you've just added even more pressure because I have to represent.
You do.
Very nervous.
You're representing all the fantasy football female content creators that are out there.
Best of the best at this. You are good. You have a podcast to talk about these things.
I'm on your podcast to talk about these things, actually. Every Thursday, I'm on the CSS DFS podcast, which is on the Fantasy Focus feed. So technically, I'm on your podcast.
No, I'm not part of that one. And I trust you when it comes. I would be normally asking you, like, what do you think of this lineup? I listen, by the way, I am a loyal listener to the CSS DFS podcast because I listen every Sunday before I put in my little measly lineup where I'm usually going head to head with a friend because I'm, a little nervous about my picks. But hey, I won the other night. I won on Thursday night. You know what? On Thursday night, I had a really good lineup. I destroyed my friend. I think I scored 178 points or something like that on DraftKings. And it was just the night where I picked all the right people. I had Mark Andrews. I had Lamar Jackson. I was in the captain showdown. I think Lamar was my captain. I mean, I had all the right picks. And of course, I didn't put that lineup anywhere except in my little head-to-head tiny little group. And I wish I'd put it.
You always got to throw the lineup in, even a small stakes tournament. You got to throw the lineup in, like a $1 or a $3 tournament. You just got to throw it in there and see how it does.
I know. I should have. Lesson learned. But anyway, it was just a warm up for this, and so I'm gonna do my best to represent. But I'm sure you and all the listeners out there and viewers will let me know how bad my life.
You're gonna do awesome. And as I said, we're playing for charity. We are playing for $100. Loser is going to donate to the winner's charity. Stephania is playing for donorschoose.org. If you go to that link, there'll be a link down below in the description on YouTube. Just click show more. If you're listening on mobile, right below the screen, there's like the title. Click on that. It'll expand. You'll find a link if you want to donate, and it'll pop up some nearby projects that are relevant to you and where you live and how you can help. As always, I will be playing for No Kid Hungry. We just surpassed the $13,000 mark to be raised for this football season. And our goal is to raise $25,000 on the rest of this regular season. And I will be matching every $5,000 up to $25,000 by the end of the year. So hopefully we can get to that $25,000 mark. We'll have raised $50,000 for No Kid Hungry. So Stephania, why don't you tell everybody where they can... Thank you.
I am so proud of you for raising all that money for your charity. But today I'd like to raise some for mine.
That's right.
And if I can just say, may I say a little bit about Donors Choose?
Please do. And tell everybody where they can find you on social media. Talk about Donors Choose. Talk about all of it.
Yeah, so pretty easy. I'm Stephania_ESPN on Twitter, at Stephania Bell on Instagram. I have 2 social handles, so those are the main places. I really, education is really important to me, and donorschoose.org to me is an organization that I've really appreciated because it funds very specific projects. So teachers who are, as we know, teachers everywhere never have enough money to do everything they want for their students. I know so many teachers, friends with so many teachers. I was a teacher. I was in university settings, so was not quite the same constraints, but many teachers are reaching into their pockets, their wallets to provide the resources they need for school because they never do have enough. And I think early education and early literacy programs are so important. So I'm a big fan of supporting projects that these teachers come up with. And with Donors Choose, what's awesome is that the teacher builds the project and budgets it out. So you can find, as you said, something that's, if you want to help someone in a community that's near you, or, sometimes I do something for California because that's where I'm from, even though I live in the East Coast now, but you can see the project. So you can know exactly what they're trying to raise the money for, how much they still need if other people have donated. So you know how close they are to getting the project funded. And then once the project's fully funded, the Donors Choose group actually then helps execute, getting those supplies for the teacher. And the best part is, the teachers often post thank you notes. The kids will sometimes write thank yous, or you get to see the pictures of how they're implementing it in the classroom. There's definitely this, if you like to see where your money goes, I think there's a reward in that. And the other thing is they will accept donations of even as small as $1.
Every dollar helps.
Every dollar helps. So I've been a big fan of the organization for a while. It's where because even if I can donate only a little bit at a time, you might be able to help fund one project for a teacher.
Awesome. So great charity. We're going to see if we can do something. Guys, if you're not in the Smiz Gang Listener League, get in there, smizzle.tv/league, $35,000 prize pool. It is a $10 entry fee, 3 max, absolutely no rake. So make sure that you jump in that and let's fill it so that they have to make it bigger. Next week, Stephania, you chose to pick first. So who are you taking off the board that I am not going to have the ability to grab here?
This is going to be a shocker for everyone. No one's going to see it coming.
Okay.
I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes.
Fair.
Now, do I click on the link? Am I doing this manually here too?
Yeah, you build your lineup on the head-to-head that I sent you, and then it'll save to that, and then we'll just play on the weekend.
It accidentally took 2. I didn't mean that. Okay. So yes, I took Patrick Mahomes because he's good at football. I'm doing a Matthew Berry analysis, #analysis, and I know that Patrick Mahomes has not looked quite himself this year. I know he struggled. He talked about he's got to reevaluate what he's doing. But look who they're playing. And you say, Washington, I thought they had a great defense.
They did have one last year.
Defense, but, they haven't been able to find themselves. Look, I think that they still have outstanding, they have a couple outstanding players in their defense, but their defense as a whole has not been able to put it together. I don't know what's going on there. But there's also, Washington, as you may have heard, is going through some challenging times of their own. And I just think this is an opportunity. I would not want to face a ticked off Kansas City offense. And that's what they're getting. And with their running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be out. Which I actually think, Darrell Williams is still going to be utilized. He was utilized a little bit more before Edwards-Helaire even went down with the injury. But I still think this is an angry Kansas City offense who wants to prove that they're better. And look out, Washington.
Look, Washington has given up the most DraftKings points to opposing quarterbacks this season. They've given up the 4th most points to opposing wide receivers and opposing tight ends. 2 positions where Kansas City is well stocked. You're going to go with Mahomes with your first overall pick. That means that I've got 2nd and 2. I still have McCaffrey up on the screen. I'm not taking McCaffrey. I am going to take, because you took him, I'm going to take Travis KELCE. Now, KELCE is dealing with an injury. He said he suffered a little bit of a stinger. Based on the rules of the cage, if KELCE is out, if you draft a player who is out this weekend, you can edit that player in your lineup for somebody the same price or lower. I will take the chance on KELCE this week. If he's out, I'll have to pivot to somebody much cheaper to figure out where I'm going to go with that spot. but he's just an absolute monster. I actually just got lucky enough to win. I saw you bidded on him too bid on him. I just said bidded because I don't English very well. In our guillotine league on the 06010, I was lucky enough to get KELCE, who I think is one of the biggest difference makers in the league in terms of fantasy.
I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
So how much did you spend?
425 or 475. Like, I've spent most of what I had left.
Stop it.
Yes.
Is that what you put in?
Yes.
You know what I put in?
A little bit less.
Like the tiniest, like 405 or 4. Like, I was like, I haven't looked yet to see if I got him or not, but man, you just edged me out.
I fist pumped this morning when I got that pick. I looked this month, I was drinking my coffee and I looked this morning at the guillotine league. I was like, okay, who got KELCE? I know somebody must have went 700, me 475. Let's go. Like, that's the only thing I needed for that team. And that means I'm going to completely get schwacked this weekend and knocked out of the league. But KELCE is going to be my number one here. My number two pick, and then we're going to come back to you. I'm going to go with a running back. I think that there's a lot of running backs this week, but the one that I'm going to go with over and above all is Henderson Jr. on the Rams, playing a massive amount of snaps, is included in the pass game, does get a lot of the inside the 5 usage. He's only 6K. A lot of running backs are underpriced this week. So I think there's tons of value in that mid-range between like 5K and 7K, but love the amount of service that he gets. And as I've said for like the last 2-3 years, as much as the Rams throw the ball, when they get inside the 10, McVay just he sends in the jumbo squad and they just run it when they get in close. So good touchdown equity here. Lot of carries, good target equity as well with 2 games of 5 and 6 targets. So I'll take Henderson, albeit on the road against the Giants defense. And back to you for one pick.
All right. I am going to go. I feel like we're playing chess. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then I'm speaking it out loud. This is very nerve-wracking. I'm going to go with, stand by, I got to find him. Oh, there he is. Look at how cheap he is. I'm going to go with Devontae Booker. Why am I going to go with Devontae Booker? Because he's a great value here, and Saquon Barkley's not going to play. Now, I know he hasn't been ruled out yet, but did you see the goose egg on his ankle?
It was the size of a softball.
It really was. A poor guy. I mean, you talk about coming off of this complex knee injury where we didn't know if he was going to start the season. And they have very gradually increased his workload. And to me, as a physical therapist, you know, one of the things you'd be mindful of is when so his knee injury was to the right, this ankle injury is to the left, but you don't want somebody coming back and being very tentative on the left side and then compensating by overloading the right side after you've done all this to make sure that there's good balance, that he's strong. And even still, we've seen that he's been progressing as far as the right leg, you know, even every single week, you know, the workload has been gradually upped for a reason. You don't put him out there if he's compromised with that recent history of that injury. So I think that Saquon's likely out this week. I would think it's going to be a couple of weeks at least, but of course that all depends on how he recovers, et cetera. But meanwhile, Devontae Booker is a talented running back. We've seen that already. So he's going to be the guy. And at that price point, give him to me. I'm not sure.
He slides right into Saquon's workload too. Like he led the league with 3 inside the 5 carries last week in relief of Saquon Barkley after the injury. Had 4 targets last week. They're basically just, look, it's the next man up. It's you don't have the talent Saquon Barkley has, but you're going to have the role that he had in this offense.
Also, we don't know what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. You know, Daniel Jones in the concussion protocol. Is this a situation where they're going to trust the passing game? All their receivers are banged up. Devontae Booker is healthy. They may look to the run game. I mean, they're playing the Rams. Aaron Donald, we've already practically every quarterback he faces, they end up with a hand injury when they're throwing. So, you know, get that ball out of the way, get it to Devontae Booker quickly. I think that he actually has a big role this week. And like I said, he's the right price for me.
I think you're fine there. One of the better values on the slate, allows you to pay up and afford Mahomes. Coming back over to my team, I don't know where I want to go. God, wide receiver's kind of a mess this week. I think I can get away with just finding wide receivers. The problem's going to be, can I afford these other running backs that I would kind of like to get? I'm going to lock in a wide receiver. I feel like I kind of have to at this point. I'm going to go with T. Higgins. He's 5,300 coming off of a 7-target week against Green Bay. He's just too cheap for the amount of targets that he gets on a week in, week out basis. He's like, what, 1,200 less? Jamar Chase is having a fantastic year. Okay. Take nothing away from Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase at 6,700, whose fantasy value has been so heavily reliant on scoring touchdowns, which are extremely variant with 5 of them through his first 5 games. And he's a monster, nothing but respect for Jamar Chase. But like T. Higgins, 2 touchdowns in the 3 games that he played, and probably going to be right there in terms of target market share from Burrow against Detroit. And I like to kind of, Daniel, put earmuffs, please, because I'm going to attack Detroit every single week with whoever's on offense against them. So T. Higgins, I get that massive discount at wide receiver. I'll take it. He's kind of a mid-range value for me in terms of his pricing. Not a bare minimum guy, but he allows me to get to do the things that I want to do.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I was sort of thinking about going with Jamar Chase, because really the deep, they're hurting at the corner position in Detroit, due to injury, etc. And so I think any Cincinnati wide receiver you can't go wrong with. And they've been playing lights out in their passing game as well. But I'm going to do something like, I really don't trust anyone in Washington. However, I just made a case for why I like Patrick Mahomes so much, and that he's going to be angry and scoring and throwing and just giving the Washington defense a nightmare.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for Washington? They're going to have to try and score right back. And
True.
So I'm going to take Terry McScorin, as Matthew Berry calls him, and I'm going to put him in there because, we've seen that you can score on Kansas City, and they're going to be in a position where they need to do it. And so he's my guy.
30 points in 2 games this year, 10 or more targets in 3 of the 5 games this year. Quarterback play hasn't been amazing, but it's at least been fun. And whenever they drop back to pass, it's going Terry McLaurin's way more often than not. So big time market share there. You lock in another player, you have 4,800 remaining, but you have a defense, and defenses can be extremely cheap. So you'll have a little bit more than that. I have $31,000 left to spend, plus or minus. Let's see. What can I do at wide receiver here? Wide receiver or running back. So I don't think that I need to stack when it comes to, or have bring back players. Like, correlation is not really the key when it comes to head-to-head games or cash games like this one is. So I just want to get value. I want to get floor. I want to get opportunity to ceiling. And there's like so much value in this mid-range at running back, like 5K to 7K. But I also kind of want to reach up, because I think that the high price guys are too underpriced, and the one who should be like 9,000 and 9,500 based on DraftKings scoring is Austin Ekeler. He's 7,900. He's getting an expectation of 20 touches, squaring off against Baltimore, who has given it up through the air to running backs and on the ground to opposing running backs. He is a game flow independent running back. So if the Chargers are ahead, it's likely because Austin Ekeler has gotten the ball and they've gotten opportunities in the red zone and inside the 5, where he is getting those carries this year that he did not get before. And if they're behind, they're just going to throw the ball more, which means that they give him targets, and every target on DraftKings is worth 2.8 rush attempts. So I don't think there's any way that you can lose, whether the Chargers win or lose this game. And I don't know which way the game's going to go, but I know that the game flow is going to be independently. It's going to be something that benefits Austin Ekeler, whether they're winning or whether they're losing. Austin Ekeler heavily involved at 7,900. I'm going to have to find some value somewhere. And based on the way that the slate looks, I think that I can get there. So that's my pick. Back to you.
I love Austin Ekeler.
He's so good.
I loved him before the start of the season. By the way, we were talking earlier about Scott Fishbowl Austin Ekeler was one of my value picks because he, you know, as we got later, you know, as you know, that Scott Fish Bowl, the draft is early. And as we got closer to the season, I think people were starting to get hyped on Austin Ekeler. But I don't know. I think people were worried about the injury from last year. But my feeling was we saw him come back and play. So we knew that he had recovered from that and was able to perform at a high level. And he only had the whole off season in addition to get ready. So I love Austin Ekeler. I love that pick. I'm jealous of it because I want Austin Ekeler only on my teams, but he's not because you took him. So I'm going to go, where do I want to go now? Let's see. I think I'm going to go over to somebody who's coming on strong now, as he did before. It took a few games to get into the season last year for Jonathan Taylor to start to make himself heard. And I think we see he's running very strong now. I like the Indy looked pretty good last week. You know, very they couldn't finish it out, but they look good. He was running strong. Now I know there's an argument that, you know, Marlon Mack's been running more. And personally, I love that Marlon Mack is getting the action because first and foremost, I'm still a physical therapist. And Marlon Mack had an Achilles tendon rupture last year. And for all the people who were like, oh, you know, it's the end, like they never come back with. Just watching him run makes me happy. I saw him at training camp. He's worked so hard. He looks good. Like, okay, he's not an RB1, but he wasn't going to be in this offense anyway. I don't think it's because he's not capable of that production, and he's only going to get stronger as the season goes on. I do think they're showcasing him some potentially for trade value. And so, yeah, maybe he gets a little bit more work here and there, but Jonathan Taylor has been performing better. I think his vision somehow gets better the more he's running. And they're playing Houston. They're
not good. They're not good at the football. And Jonathan Taylor, very good at the football. And I like it when the puzzle pieces fit together. I like that he's included in the pass game. He is second in the league or first. I forget. Never fact check me. He's one of the highest players in the league in terms of inside the 5 carries. He's getting a lot of work near the goal line, highest leverage carries that there are, and involved in the pass game, and at home, and favored. Realistic expectation, 20 touches. He's one of our 5 box running backs. Checks off all 5 of those boxes. So good pick there for you.
How about that? Like a 5-tool player. He's a 5-box running back.
5-box running. Chat, spam those 5-box emotes in the chat. I'm going to go off the reservation here with my next pick. I typically do not use 2 tight ends in a lineup.
Oh no. What are you gonna do?
But this week, I think I have an opportunity to capture some value with Ricky Seals-Jones, who in that Washington-Kansas City game last week, in relief, let's say, 2 weeks ago of Logan Thomas, and last week playing in his stead, basically just took over the Logan Thomas role in Washington's offense. He basically played 95 to 100% of the snaps. He ran routes on 75% of the dropbacks. He got 8 targets. I'm not expecting like a 20-point fantasy day from Ricky Seals-Jones, but at 3,000 DraftKings dollars, I don't need that. His median projection is between 8 or 9.5 points, which is more than enough for me to afford the Austin Ekelers and the Travis Kelces and everything else that I like. So I am opening this up, which I don't normally open up, to have a tight end in flex, which allows me these super salary guys. I have 20,800 remaining for a quarterback, 2 wideouts, and probably a very cheap defense. You can't block my quarterback. I've got to get a couple of wide receivers, but I like where my team has started off, and we'll see how it shapes up. You've got a bunch of wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a defense for 22.6 remaining. So where are you going to go next?
Oh, I know. It's hard. It's like, I hate that you have to do math while you're doing this.
It's very hard. Imagine doing math and having to be the producer and the director and the host and all. Like, I've got to do it all. I'm the one-man band.
But you do it stop, Al. You're just good at this. I don't feel sorry for you. Don't try and make me feel sorry for you.
I tried.
Let's see. I'm looking at some things.
Go for it. Talk us through it.
I have to think.
You're always allowed to think. Thinking is admired on this stream. I don't think very much.
I don't believe you. Let's see. God, I can't put 2 giants on my team. That's just ridiculous. I had an idea for somewhere where I thought I could save a little money and get a value pick, but I'm not. You know what? Forget it. I'm in spending mode right now. So okay. Forget it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take Darren Waller. And you may ask, like, why are you touching anyone on the Raiders right now? Because the team still is they're going to go out and play. They're going to be professionals, what they're going to do. And I don't think with that much is going to change. You know, I think there's enough pieces in place in the coaching stuff that have been consistently there for several years. I don't think the offense is going to look any different. And if anything, what do teams do when they've had a rough week or people are making assumptions that the internal turmoil of what's going on within the team is going to make them fall apart?
They circle the wagons.
Right. You circle the wagons. It's funny because I was talking about Washington. I used the same argument about drama at Washington, but it's a little bit different. We don't need to get into it here, but in terms of some of the personnel challenges that they have there, I do think it directly impacts the team in a very specific way. Whereas in this case, I don't think it does as much. And so who is Derek Carr's favorite target? Old Mr. Reliable, it's Darren Waller. And so that's where I'm going.
Look, he's been consistent, even though the results haven't been consistent. We try to focus on volume. Right. Again, the outlier 19 targets against Baltimore in week 1, 7 targets in week 2, 7 in week 3, 7 in week 4, 8 in week 5 against Chicago. So if nothing else, we can assume that Darren Waller will get around 7 targets in this game and probably catch a ball that goes for 20 or more yards, as he's done that in each game this season. And while Denver's a tough defense, I agree with you. I think that their fall apart. I think that the locker room was lost last weekend because things started coming out before the game. And then now I think it's like, look, we're done with that. Let's move forward. I think that Waller's a fine play in that spot, and an elite tight end. And that's a position that I think you can get an edge. Yeah.
I said, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
He said he was a fine play. So I'm going to go. The people don't pay up at tight end enough in daily fantasy. I would have taken Travis KELCE if you hadn't sniped him in the very beginning. So. I'm
always waving the KELCE flag.
For that. The only thing that makes me nervous about KELCE is the stinger this week, but honestly, that guy doesn't miss time either. He's incredible at bouncing back. So,
I mean, when your nickname is Zeus, you have to have some solid healing properties, I think. So, all right. So I've locked up my flex, and you can do anything you want. I can only take wide receivers. I can take a quarterback or a defense, but like, there's no point in me taking a quarterback. You've already locked your spot. I'm going to try and focus on wide receiver. I have 20,800 remaining. I am going to take a giant. I think he's going to be fine. I could have been safe here. Like, chat, I could have been safe and gone with this dude right here. I could have gone with Pittman and just say, look, he's healthy. We know he's going to play. Playing against Houston. I get it. He's a great play. I think there's too many injuries for the Giants. And Kadarius Toney, aside from outing himself as not the smartest player in the world for punching a grown man who's wearing a helmet, aside from that, he definitely made up for it and apologized the next day in what seemed like a very solid apology, at least to me. It did not seem like a passive apology. Joe Judge said that he's taking part in Wednesday's practice, which is always the first hurdle. I tend to not overreact when players miss a Wednesday practice because they just give days off on Wednesday. Thursday and Friday are what matter more to me in terms of missed practices. But if you're running a dude out there on Wednesday, he's probably going to be all right unless something happens to overcomplicate. So yes, he's got an ankle and a foot that he's dealing with, but he's out there on the practice field on Wednesday. Kadarius Toney 5,600 based on the volume with both Shepard and Slayton out and the production that he had in their place with 9 targets, 13 targets against Dallas, 189 yards. And as good as he looked on tape, a lot of highlight type jukes and dips and dives, I don't think you're going to be able to get this dude off the field with as few dynamic offensive weapons as the Giants have at their disposal right now. So 5,600. Again, I think that the mid-range is where everything is this week. I'm probably not going to be paying up for a lot of guys outside of tournament stacks. So Kadarius Toney just kind of fits for me in this lineup.
I will say, I think the Giants might get Slayton and Shepard back this week.
Well, that would stink for me.
They were actually doing some work and looked pretty good reportedly last week. So if they do get both of them back, I think that
snaps could be it could hurt me,
especially if Tony's the one who has the most recent injury and they're on the upswing. But you know, they're coming up, they're both dealing with hamstring injuries, and we know how that goes. Like we talked about that, the number 1 recurrence rate, very hard at the wide receiver position in particular to deal with a hamstring injury, especially if you're somebody who's known to stretch the field. Might be a little bit different if you're playing in sort of middle of the field, short intermediate passing game, where you usually can actually create a little more control. You know, there are some teams who are really smart, do that. They have players they use situationally, or, you know, the Patriots were one of the best. If you remember when Josh Gordon was first with the Patriots, and they were, he had a hamstring injury when he was first coming back into football with them. And they were only bringing him in with plays that were like within 20 yards of the goal line, because it manufactured situations where he couldn't get into top accelerating speed. And that's how you protect him. So smart teams will do things like that. But I don't know that the Giants will. So,
wow.
So there's that.
Shots fired.
I just don't know. I haven't seen evidence of it yet. So, you know, I'm just going to say that. Okay.
I've got my fingers crossed over for Tony. So you've got 2 wide receivers, a flex, and a defense.
And by the way, he is so talented.
So good.
So good. And it's fun to watch him. And I hope it pays off for you. Let's see. Well, I'm just going to go with another receiver. I'm just going to stick in the same game, be honest with you. Only I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. And I think that now that they have rediscovered Bobby Trees, I think he stayed, like, I don't think we see a drought from him again. It was too big of a night.
It was enough already. It was enough already with the 6 targets.
Yeah. And by the way, look what he can do. Like, look how much he produced. He is a reliable receiver. He's one of those, you know, we were talking about this in the preseason, I think maybe on our show, maybe it was a show that Field and I did, and we were previewing the Rams and saying, you know, it's not like the sexiest name out there. You don't get like the Tyreek Hill excitement, and even Cooper Kupp, and much has been made about the Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford relationship. And you know how they talked about how they were having breakfast every day and going through things. Somebody's like, well, he and Bobby Trees must have had breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack. They went for a jog.
Whatever they did to fix that relationship, they got in sync. And I think it's one of those things, there's a trust there. I'm sure for Stafford coming in, it's all about developing a trust and a chemistry with each player. And Robert Woods, to his credit, was so patient, not a complaining guy, but you could tell he was getting frustrated. And if you talk to people who were around the Rams, they knew he was getting frustrated, and the beat writers were talking about it, and everybody was like kind of beating the drum, and you got to get Robert Woods more involved. We saw what happened when they did. And I just don't think that goes away. And they have an opportunity against the Giants to be able to, to score, I would say, plentifully.
Yeah, I mean, they have like the highest team total on the slate. Robert Woods is a great pick. Again, I think we've seen the floor, right, in terms of his volume so far this year with 4, 6, and 6 targets in 3 of the 5 games. And then the other 2 games are more realistic. The 9 targets, 14 is going to be an outlier. That's going to be about like, 7 to 11 targets is generally where Robert Woods is going to float. And the fact that he was below that for 3 games so far this season speaks volumes. Like, they just have shiny new toys. They wanted to get D-Jax involved one game. They got, you know, they're getting Van Jefferson involved a little bit. You have 9,900 remaining. I'm going to assume you're going to go for a cheap defense, and you're going to have to find a little bit of value with maybe some 4K players or some guys below 4K, and I'm sure you're going to do pretty well with that, because I think you're working off of Mike Clay's value chart over at ESPN, and he's really good at identifying value plays.
You know, it's funny because I hadn't looked at it when I sort of drafted because I was so nervous about facing you in this. I'm just going to be honest. I was nervous. So I did like a practice lineup on Draftkings.
Yeah.
And then you ruined it by taking Travis KELCE out of the gate. So you already threw me off. But I have to say, I'm pretty proud of myself because I did this lineup on my own. And then I looked at Mike Clay's, and a lot of the ones I had picked on my own lined up. However, by looking at this list, which it's just so nice how he has it laid out, it actually drew my eye to some other spots where I might not have looked. So I've been making a couple little, you know, changes on the fly to things that I'm thinking about doing for my match here against you. But I started on my own. I just want you to know that.
I appreciate it. I love that you agreed to come on the show here. I know that this is not your wheelhouse. This is not the zip code that you typically live. So I appreciate you coming on the show. And again, we do all this for charity. All the ad revenue from our Wednesday cage match on YouTube goes to charity at the end of the year. If you wanted to donate, there's links to both charities down below in the description. So take a couple seconds, and every dollar helps. I'm going to lock up my defense spot because I think that even if you take the wide receiver that I'm looking at, there's another in that kind of price range. And I'm going to take the Vikings defense, which their offense can't get it together, right? They have an identity problem right now. They go away from what works. In the second half, they're having problems. The report was that the coaches have been asked by Zimmer now to, like, you all have homework. You have to go figure out, what are we doing wrong in the second half? What plays would you want to call in the second half? Because, like, instead of just feeding the guys that are doing the thing and just doing the obvious stuff, it seems like they're trying to outthink everybody. It's like, oh, look, JJ is uncoverable, and we're going to have him have 100 receiving yards in the first half, and then we're going to stop throwing it in the second half. Maybe just keep throwing it to JJ and let the rest work itself out from there by opening that up. But the defense has been extremely consistent with multiple sacks in every game so far this year, squaring off against Carolina. And we all know that Darnold has struggled with interceptions throughout his career, and the fact that pressure leads most interceptions. I usually pay down really low, like 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, because there's so much variance involved in defense, especially in cage matches. I just want to lock in as much floor as possible. But, like, the pressure that the Vikings can put on, even on the road in this situation, they're going to be trouble for Darnold and that Panthers offense. So I'm going to lock them in at 2,900. I kind of know where I'm going to go. I've got 6,150 remaining per salary. You can't block me at quarterback. I think there's 2 wide receivers in the price range I'm looking at. So, like, you can take the guy that's my primary, but I can still get the other guy. We're coming to you. You need a couple of value play. Actually, you can't take my guy because you can't afford him. Yay. So back to you for a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense to lock it in for the weekend.
I'm going to take, and people are probably going to think I'm crazy for this one, but maybe I am. I just believe in this team. I'm taking the Cowboys defense because I think Trevon Diggs is good for at least one pick. Good. I mean, you know, and Mac Jones will throw an interception here and there. And I think this is going to be a situation. It's going to be a little bit different game. I'm really excited to see this one, actually, because the Dallas's offense is just flying right now. It's like they're firing on all cylinders. Dak looks amazing. Zeke is, kicking it up a notch. He looks fantastic. Tony Pollard, their whole receiving core when they're healthy is good. And there's no reason to think that they won't be out there. They got a tight end in Dalton Schultz, who's been amazing. So they have all these offensive weapons. New England's going to have their hands full trying to defend that. They're going to score. They're going to need to try and match that. And I think when they're under pressure and Mac Jones is trying to match that with receivers who, quite frankly, aren't up to the level of the Cowboys receiving core, I think they'll score some, but I think there will be some mistakes. And I think the Cowboys will take advantage of that. So,
I mean, the thing that the Cowboys do really well this year is score an awful lot of points pretty much every single game. And they're better defensively, especially, you mentioned Diggs, but both of their cornerbacks are rated in the top 15 in terms of coverage on PFF, which is telling me that the more you can force opponents to throw, the better it is for your fantasy defense, right? Because we don't want to face teams that are going to throw it 12 times. You want to face teams that are going to throw it 30 to 50 times. And the fact that the Cowboys are putting teams in these game scripts where they have to drop back 20, 30, 50% more than they would normally like to gives those playmakers on the defensive side of the ball a chance to make plays. Multiple interceptions in every game this year, defensive touchdown in 2 of 5, and multiple sacks in 3 of 5. 3,200 for them. That leaves you with 6,700, 3,350 remaining in total. So you got to find 2 value plays, 1 at wide receiver and 1 at your flex spot. I'm going to take my quarterback here. Why don't you prepare your last 2 picks? I'll take my quarterback here. Actually, I'm going to take my wide receiver here. And then you'll have 2 guys that you can pick to go from there. I'm going to stay in this mid-range here. And I've been on this guy's fan club for a while. And he did not have a good game against New England because, as we've known for years, Bill Belichick likes to take whatever opponent's coach's favorite toy and put it in the closet so that he can't play with it for the rest of that day. And the only toy really on Houston's offense is Brandon Cooks. 5,800, multiple targets in 2 of the 5 games. I'm going to use the New England game as the Russian judge. I'm just going to say that's going to be his lowest score of the week, lowest score of the season. And I'm just going to exclude that, assuming that he's got an expectation of, let's say, 7 to 12 targets every time he takes the field. Houston should theoretically be in passing game scripts most games. His floor of targets and his ADP, or sorry, his ADOT, plus his average expected fantasy points on DraftKings for that ADOT means that he should score me like 15 points on a median. And at 5,800, that's more than good enough for a cash game lineup. So I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks, and I'll leave a little mystery. I've got 6,500 left for a quarterback. I'm sure chat's going to try and figure out who I'm going for. But back to you. Why don't you finish out your lineup with a wide receiver and a flex? 2 value plays for us.
It's hard to do 2 at once because then I have to do more math.
Okay.
You realize
do one and then I'll do mine.
Okay. I'm going to go with DUVERNAY,
okay,
who I think showed us a lot in this last Ravens game. And maybe he showed us a lot because Sammy Watkins was hurt. But with Sammy Watkins being hurt, and I think that he'll be out this week. I mean, maybe not, but a hamstring injury that forced him out, that it was clear that he wasn't going to come back. And we know he's dealt with injuries in the past. As my last receiver, I'm just going to go with the upside here for him. You know, we don't know that much about him, but he had 4 targets thrown his way. So I think that, you know, anybody can end up in the end zone. There's the big play guys like Hollywood Brown, but then there's somebody like DUVERNAY who could be that surprise for them, just another outlet for Lamar.
And he returns kicks, so you have extra touchdown equity if he does bust one against the Chargers.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
Look at there. So, like, you get a little bit of extra added touchdown equity if he can rip one off on a kickoff or a punt return, leaving you with 3,300 for your final spot. I'll get my quarterback. Chad has already pinpointed who it was going to be. It's going to be Joey B. He had a bruised neck. That doesn't sound good. After the game, Aaron Rodgers apparently went up to him and goes, dude, just slide. There's no, just
he had a throat contusion.
Yeah, not good.
I mean, that sounds even worse, right?
It sounds worse than a bruised neck. Yes. So like he couldn't speak out really well after the game. It was swelling up, whatever. But like, all signs point to him playing this weekend against the Lions. And again, Daniel, please, earmuffs. I'm going to play players against the Lions, maybe to my detriment. But Joe Burrow links up very well with T. Higgins for me in this spot. So my final lineup for this weekend: Burrow, Henderson Jr., EKELER, Higgins, Tony, Cooks, KELCE, Seals, Jones. The 2 tight end setup for me, very rare. It's like a white elephant. and the Vikings defense. Coming back to you for your final pick, 3,300 in the flex. Who you got, Stephania?
I don't feel good. I don't feel good about it. Are you one of those people that thinks you have to zero out your balance?
No, not at all.
Because it's one of those where you feel guilty, like you're leaving a little money on the table. But then again, I'm just trying to decide which of these places I want to go.
Talk us through it.
Well, I'm debating about doing what you did and taking another tight end as a flex and going there with, I'm trying now. I'm looking at I'm going to do it. I'm going to copy your strategy. I'm going to take another tight end because Mike Clay tells me this is a great value. And his list of Jared Cook, who is another one, you know, he's been consistently fairly involved. I mean, Parham all of a sudden is, you know, doing things that we weren't expecting. Like he's been touchdown vulturing, I would say, based on what you would expect. And he's
on very little volume, on very little, 2 touchdowns on 7 targets this year. Right.
And so that is one of the reasons, you know, Jared Cook to me, a more regular target in the passing game there. And maybe now Parham, you know, they're looking at that like, oh, hey, we see you. We've seen what you've done. So I'm going to go with Jared Cook there for the price. And when I'm looking at comparable receivers, you know, I kind of got this idea. I was like, I can't stand the thought of taking a Houston Texan, but I was like, you know, Conley did have a nice game, but
he did.
Part of that was with Danny Amendola out. I don't know if he comes back. It's just hard for me to bet on anything with Houston right now. So I went back to the tight ends and I took Jared Cook.
All right.
What do you think, Gal? How do you grade my team? Did I get
Baltimore in terms of like DVP to tight ends, like can be a pretty noisy position, but they've given up an awful lot of points to opposing tight ends this year. And Jared Cook, this game is not a sneaky shootout, but it's a game that a lot of people are expecting to shoot out, especially in the wake of that Monday Night Football game when the Colts offense lit up Baltimore's defense, and now the Chargers offense probably a little bit better than that Colts offense. So like they should probably not have a problem scoring points if they can put up that many points, like 90 total points scored in the Cleveland Chargers game. So if they score 30 points plus, Jared Cook is going to be involved against this Baltimore defense. So you've got Patrick Mahomes, stud, Booker, Taylor, McLaurin, Woods, Devin Duvernay as a value, Darren Waller, Cook, and the Cowboys defense. Very starsy, scrubsy, but I love the stars that you picked to go along with those guys that were cheap. And we just had a $10 donation to No Kid Hungry from Stephania fan who wants to say Stephania's lineup for the win. So Stephania, thank you very much for joining the show today. I appreciate you doing it.
Somebody believes in my lineup, Al.
They do though. They look, everybody likes to make snap judgments.
When you said stars and scrubs, is that like, I want a grade of my lineup. You're the DFS pro. I dabble in DFS. You know, I enjoy it, but I always feel nervous around someone like you who does it all the time, who knows so much more about it.
So from like a cage match point of view, or from a, like, because cage match strategy is different from DraftKings strategy. I'll talk to you about it after I finish the recording. We'll talk about it with the Twitch chat and get to that in just a second. Stephania, thank you for joining, guys. There's links down below for both charities if you wanted to take part. Every dollar helps. If you wanted to go and donate to our fundraiser for No Kid Hungry, or you wanted to donate to Donors Choose to help schools and teachers that are in your area, would be greatly appreciated. Do something to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.